We're very welcoming you to do so because we hope it will be a very interactive element. We are kicking off the meeting today with the opening remarks by Ms. Karen Maguire, who is Head of Local Employment Skills and Social Innovation Division of the OECD, which will be followed by the welcome remarks by Ms. Penchan Manawangan Tikul, Head of Enterprise and Stakeholder Engagement Division, Assistant Director of the ASEAN Secretariat. Karen, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks Max, and good afternoon to those in Asia, good morning to those here more in the European continent, and welcome to all, and I hope those who celebrate had a wonderful Lunar New Year this week. Just a special thanks again also to all of those who are joining us for the debate today and speaking up on the ASEAN Secretariat, the ASEAN Foundation, the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, and the Inclusive Business Action Network. So as Max said, my name is Karen Maguire, and I support a committee at the OECD that's called Local Employment and Economic Development. And that committee has actually been around for 40 years, celebrating 40 years, really trying to inject in a lot of the OECD discussions, really interesting and innovative solutions to social problems and challenges, and really a focus on how to build stronger communities with more and better jobs for all. And so we cover a range of issues, including local employment and skills, culture, entrepreneurship, and in particular the social economy, where we've been working on that for several decades and really been at the forefront here in the OECD on thinking about the role of the social economy. And you know, when I use that term, I just want to clarify, you know, different countries use different words to describe the social economy, and I know in ASEAN inclusive business is often used, and you know, we're talking about lots of different types of social enterprises, nonprofits, cooperatives, and other mission-oriented enterprises that are really trying to make a difference. And, you know, the social economy's role has really been growing around the world, and a lot of different political agendas internationally have really been putting a lot of emphasis on its potential. You know, and given that ASEAN, and that's why I think this webinar is so timely, you know, ASEAN is really, and Southeast Asia is really a strategic priority for the OECD. The Secretary General has made that very open in all of his announcements. And, you know, I think given the economic powerhouse and the rapid growth to become the fourth largest economy in the world by 2030, it's really a great time to think about how to ensure that that growth is inclusive for all. And I think this is an area where, you know, today's debate and discussion can really help us in our thinking. So, you know, traditionally people have viewed the social economy as a place where you fix problems. So if there's homelessness, or you need to help the elderly, or you need to help those who are excluded from the labor market. And so it's been very strong in what we call maybe the repair function. But actually what's being understood is really the role of the social economy to support innovation and the transformation of the mainstream economy. And this is really where I think there's even more potential that is remaining untapped. So hopefully today we can really discuss about, you know, how in ASEAN we can think about making greater awareness and promoting these different roles of the social economy. And then what are the really concrete examples of policies, instruments, and programs that are taking place already in the region that can inspire others. You know, from the OECD side, we're developing this year principles on the social economy that could be, I think, useful for you as well going forward to think about how to take advantage of all that it has to offer. And we have also a global action currently, a major initiative looking at how to promote social and solidarity ecosystems around the world. Well, there'll be really practical guidance on legal frameworks to set the right stage, how to measure the social impact, how to promote peer learning so that all of these innovative solutions can be shared around the world. So, you know, we are really excited to reinforce collaboration with ASEAN, such as the webinar today, We've had a longstanding engagement with the Southeast Asia Regional Policy Network on Education and Skills that had its last meeting back in November. And I think there's really exciting opportunities to go forward even more on issues of the social economy, but also other areas I think of high interest in the region, such as cultural and creative industries, and others that are really have a strong potential for this really transversal and inclusive forms of economic growth. So we're excited that, of course, this is an event in the run-up to the OECD ministerial meeting about the Southeast Asia program, which takes place next week on the 9th and 10th of February. And without further ado, I'd really like to pass the floor and welcome Pension, who is head of enterprise and stakeholder engagement at the ASEAN Secretariat, to also deliver her remarks. So please, Pension, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karen. Ms. Karen McBride, Head of Local Employment, Skill and Social Innovation Division. Alex Bomber, Head of South and Southeast Asia Division. Antonella Noya, Head of Social Economy and Innovation Unit from OECD. Dr. Yang Mi-Eng, Executive Director of ASEAN Foundation. Gil Gonzalez, Executive Director of ASEAN Back. Mr. Marcus Dietrich from IBAN, and colleagues from area. Panelists, ladies, gentlemen, and participants from all ASEAN member states. A very good afternoon to you from Jakarta. On behalf of the ASEAN Secretariat, I'm very much honored to be here discussing this very important topic on social economy and how actors play a role in making a more sustainable and social and inclusive future for us. The significance of human-centered and sustainable partnership are recognized in ASEAN Charter. It's mentioned that ASEAN is convinced of the need to strengthen existing bonds of regional solidarity to realize an ASEAN community that is politically cohesive, economically integrated, and socially responsible in order to effectively respond to the current and future challenges and opportunities. In another section on the significance of the sustainable partnership and human-centered, also recognized in the purpose of ASEAN in ASEAN Charter, that ASEAN aims to promote a people-oriented ASEAN in which all sectors of society are encouraged to participate in and benefit from the process of ASEAN integration and community building. And this requires collective efforts from various stakeholders to provide them with an enabling environment for them to grow. And considering the fact that MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprises make up to 99% of total establishments, contribute to 85% of employment, either by the formal or informal sectors, we underscore the crucial role of the social economy actors in reaching out to these sectors. Therefore, I'm very pleased to share some of the works that ASEAN has implemented on promoting inclusive business, or IB, in contributing to the efforts in building inclusive ASEAN. The ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises, or ACME, had taken the lead in promote inclusive business, or IB, in ASEAN after it was introduced in 2018 by the Philippines. ASME activities were mainly focused on creating awareness on the IB model, or inclusive business model, and increasing capacity of ASEAN policymakers to mainstream the IB in policymaking in each country, in each ASEAN member states. The guidelines for promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN was published in 2021 to serve as a common reference point for ASEAN in promoting and implementing inclusive business model. It advocates bridging inclusive business works under the economic pillar to ASEAN social development agenda. So it's kind of merged between the socio-cultural pillar and ASEAN economic community pillar. It also described the partnership model with the private sector in balancing economic and social development agenda. And then this one, we received very good collaboration from IBAN as well. Mr. Marcus is also here. And to promote inclusive business to the wider stakeholder, the guidelines has been translated into ASEAN national languages, and the ASEAN inclusive business impact stories are also being produced. Inclusive business e-learning courses were introduced through our ASEAN SME Academy. It's an online learning platform, and inclusive businesses were awarded during ASEAN Business Award that we collaborate with ASEAN Business Advisory Council, our private sector body. I encourage you to make use of these resources that I have just shared with you to illustrate the role of social economy in building inclusive ASEAN. And then with that, thank you for your kind attention. I wish everyone an interesting exchange and fruitful discussion through this webinar today. Thank you very much.
Ms. Karen, Ms. Penchan, thank you very much for the opening remarks and for giving us an outline of the most relevant initiatives in ASEAN, as well as the work that we're doing at the OECD. Prior to going forward, we just wanted to share with you on the next slide, the Slido, because we see that we're a number of participants coming from around the world. We would greatly appreciate if you can go to this link or to slido.com and enter the code. And it will ask you a few questions. First, it will ask you where you come from. And after the keynote, we will be able to see the geographic representation of the participants here. With this, I'm very pleased to announce Ms. Antonella Noe, who is the head of the Social Economy and Innovation Unit, and who has been working on this issue for about 25 years. Ms. Noe is a well-known expert internationally, and she will provide some keynote speech from our perspective on what is the role of the social economy as a path for inclusive and human-centered future. So, Antonella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Max. I have been working for 25 years, not 45, but you are making me even older. I'm very glad to be here today with you, and I wish to Happy New Year to those of you who celebrate the lunar year. So I'm here today to present the role of social economy in driving resilient and sustainable economy and societies, and I will explain why social economy is relevant for the ASEAN context. So the reason why social economy is relevant is any discourse on building a human-centered, sustainable and resilient development model is because it has embedded features that particular business and governance model, which make it very well suited to deliver on social, economic, and most of the time environmental impact. And this has been even more evident during the pandemic and after it, because social economy has really shown its capacity to mitigate the immediate effect of the pandemic, its consequences, but also the long and medium terms one. So as Karen was mentioning before, the OECD has worked in this area for many, many years, at the moment where social economy was not yet recognized as the important actor that it is, that it was already then, because it gathered already hundreds of thousands entities. But since then, it has become really more prominent all around the world, including in Asia. And we see that governments are really increasingly interested in promoting this economic model. So maybe we can start to open my PowerPoint presentation, please, because I would like to quickly explain what the term social economy means, because I understand it is not well spread in the region. So as you will see here, there are a number of notions and approaches ranging from corporate social responsibility to social economy that represent a set of actors and approaches whose overall objective is to create positive and environmental impact and social impact with different level of social impact. So as you see, the social economy refers to the set of association, cooperatives, mutuals, foundation, and social enterprise whose activity is primarily driven by the values of solidarity, the primacy of people over capital, and democratic and participative governance. So although social economy exists all over the world, we know that often the different entities which compose it do not recognize themselves as belonging to the social economy. And we also know that in some countries, the language is more that of social entrepreneurship, although maybe, and for sure, there are overlaps, but already differences between this notion. What really matters is that all these show that the economy and the society is climbing more and more entities which can produce a positive impact. So next slide, please. What characterizes the social economy is its raison d'etre, which is that it primarily addresses social need, and it has a different way of operating because it implements a specific business model based on cooperation and which are very often locally rooted and sometimes participative governance. So while the entities share common principles and practices, it is social economy, it is very different in terms of entities, size, outreach, and sectors. And what it is important to underline is that social economy is not only siloed in traditional sectors, such as, for instance, healthcare or social services, but it is really operating in most of the economic sector, and even very modern ones such as new technologies, renewable energy, tourism, culture, transportation, and so on and so forth. So there is an enormous untapped potential for social economy around the world. So what is the role of social economy? And maybe we can go to the next slide. These are just the more important the role that social economy can play, but there are many others. It is an important source of job creation, not only for disadvantaged individuals, but in general, it is an important role to create jobs, and we have seen it since many years, including after, for instance, the financial crisis back in 2008, when we saw that the growth of employment in social economy was higher compared to the other sector, and then to the traditional business, I mean. And then, of course, it has an important role in addressing social environmental challenges because of its DNAs, identities, as I was mentioning before, and very importantly, it is a source of innovation and inspirational. And we have seen that it is part of this transformational role that Karen was mentioning before, because many traditional businesses are being inspired by social economy organization to adopt more socially responsible practices, and through partnership with normal business, there is a huge potential to permeate all the economy with this more innovative and more social approach. So we can move to the other slides. I want to highlight some role and some impact that the social economy can have. Of course, it has been mentioned before, throughout the pandemic, social economy organizations have demonstrated their resilience and capacity to address pressing social and economic changes, be this in providing rapid crisis responses, but also in playing this medium and long-term role. But of course, the social economy role goes beyond the management of the crisis, and we have huge evidence on the fact that social economy can also help increase the potential of more sustainable and green growth. We have recently released an analysis on this, exploring the many synergies between, for instance, the social economy and the circular economy. And we have seen that social economy, even before that the term circular economy was adopted, was already pioneering the adoption of recycling, reusing, repairing, which are some of the important characteristics of social, of circular economy. So there are synergies to be explored, and what makes the social economy especially relevant for the uptake of the circular economy is that social economy can contribute to make circular economy more socially inclusive, because it can provide job and training opportunities in this area. And we have seen many, for instance, partnership between traditional business and social economy organization in exactly repairing, reusing, employing disadvantaged people. So I do not need to mention the importance of social economy when it comes to social inclusion, but I want to underline the importance that it can also be a tool to close the gap in terms of gender equality, because women are one of the driving force behind the social economy all over the world, although there are gaps to be filled, and we are currently working on this piece of work, so we hope to bring new evidence on this. But we know, for instance, that in India, we have a good example of the self-employed women associations in India, which represent 1.5 million informally owned, employed women who facilitate the access to banking, healthcare, childcare, and many other services to women. And obviously, we all know the appetite the young people have for models that can really make a social impact. And therefore, social economy is very attractive for young people, not only as for them to be employed or create social enterprises, but also as consumer, because there is an appetite also for product produced by social enterprises with a good social impact. So, and this is relevant because ASEAN is a very young region, and of course there is an enormous potential. So can we go to the other slide, please? Because I would like now really to show why social economy is relevant for ASEAN. It is relevant for ASEAN because ASEAN members are a growing country, and likely to become the fourth largest economy in the world in a few years. But of course, the pandemic has highlighted how fragile this growth can be. So it is important to invest in social economy, which can help. For the reason that we are seeing in the slide. So the welfare system of the region are organized in a very different manner. There is less subsidies than in Europe, and this is giving birth to a kind of social economy organization which are more relying on revenue generating operational model, and therefore there is also attracting maybe more impact investors, although obviously we need as government to boost the capacity of social economy organization to absorb this money. And so another interesting feature is that compared to Europe, social economy is more present in manufacturing and agriculture in the region, and this has an implication again on the importance of inclusive business that have gained traction across the regions, as evidenced by the ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit and Business Framework. And so we see that the policy ecosystem around social economy and social entrepreneurship are evolving, but apart from few countries, for instance, Malaysia, in which there has been the adoption of Social Entrepreneurship Promotion Act, in Singapore with activities on RAISE, and in Thailand with the Social Enterprise Accreditation Scheme, there is a lot to do for government to accompany the development of this ecosystem. Next slide, please. I'm moving to an end. I do not need to go through this because Karen has already mentioned what we have done during the year. This is just some of the activities and the tools that we use, but also I want to say that OECD has already cooperated a lot with the ASEAN member countries, and already in 2018, for instance, the ASEAN SMEs Policy Index had looked at the policy ecosystem around social enterprises. And Karen also mentioned the global action, and which covers more than 20 countries. And it is important for us also to highlight that Korea was one of the countries in which we did a lot of work. And we have seen that Korea is pioneering the development of social economy, and there are a lot of interesting initiatives over there. For instance, the Social Enterprise Promotion Act, the establishment of the Korean Social Enterprise Promotion Agency, and of a specific program, the Creative Technology Solution Program, led by the Korean International Cooperative Agency. Just briefly, because we think that this is important for the region, we are doing work on social impact measurement as really a useful way to bring visibility to social economy and to the impact that they can make. And we are producing an international guide on this, which we are sure can help countries to meaningful assess social economy value creation. And I will stop here, and I hope that we can continue to work with the region, focusing on the subject of social economy, social entrepreneurship, and social innovation, which I hope I have demonstrated are a very strategic approach for sustainable development region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonella, for giving this overview. And we see that there are a lot of things we can learn from each region, each country, and we can definitely need to continue working on this. Prior to moving to the next session, let us maybe present the answers we have received from the slide, and you will see that indeed we're very internationally present here. Can I please ask to share the screen with the answers?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I just have a technical issue.
Following this, we will ask you to answer another question on the type of a stakeholder you represent, because this will help the following panel to answer your questions in further details and to focus, because that would be quite important for us as well. Maybe prior to, I mean, let us see if it's possible to share. If not, we will just continue. As you have seen, the OECD has been working on the subject of social economy at large for a number of years, and we have been looking more attentively on the situation in Southeast Asia recently, because also it's a source of inspiration for a number of initiatives and a number of interesting practices for us. And I hope that during the panel that we will be presenting in the next few minutes, we will be able to discuss this in further questions and see how things can go. So with this, maybe let us go into the presentation. From what I have seen, we have a lot of participants coming from a number of countries, from Indonesia, but also from Australia, even countries which are from Papua New Guinea. There's representatives, and we're very welcoming all the participants to the event today. So with this, let us maybe try to go ahead with the presentation of the speakers of the next panel. We are very lucky to have 4 distinguished speakers with us, and coming from different regions, but also with different perspectives. First of all, let me present Dr. Yang Mi Eng, who is Executive Director of the ASEAN Foundation. We're also having with us Mr. Marcus Dietrich, who is the Director for Policy at Inclusive Business Action Network, very active in ASEAN, but also in other parts of the world. We're having with us Ms. Julia Ajmon Marsan, who is a Director for Strategy and Partnerships at AREA. AREA has been a traditional partner of the OECD working in ASEAN, and I'm sure she will be able to also to share with us interesting practices. And finally, Mr. Gil Gonzalez, who is the Executive Director of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, the private sector representative body of ASEAN. Maybe just prior going to that, there was another question in Slido, in a previous slide, I believe. If you go there, you will be able to please click and answer the second question, and at least at the end of the meeting, we will be able to present this. With this, let me start with Dr. Yang, who is coming from the ASEAN Foundation. Dr. Yang has been working in private and government sectors for over 26 years and has been very involved in the digital agenda of ASEAN, and has been the CEO of the largest mobile game publisher in Malaysia prior to becoming the Executive Director of the ASEAN Foundation. And prior to that, spent 19 years working as the Business Development Manager at the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. So Ms. Yang, very welcome to the meeting today. I see that you currently represent the ASEAN Foundation, which is an important foundation for the ASEAN and working on issues related to community building, arts, culture, education. But we see that your organization has been also shifting a little bit the focus following the COVID crisis. Could you please share with us what activities have you started to implement recently?
Thank you, Max. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are, and happy Lunar New Year. Thank you for having me here. So, yeah, thanks, Max. You have pointed out something very important. During this pandemic time, ASEAN Foundation did change and diverted a little bit of our, I would just say that expanded our objectives to cover more things that more relevant to this moment. So I would like to do a little bit of sharing of a PPT of what we have been doing to support the social enterprise quorum sections of the business. So for us, it's like usually ASEAN Foundation focus a lot on youth development. So previously we were doing a lot of upskilling, reskilling, you know, and then supporting of IR 4.0. But when the pandemic hit the world, we think that apart from getting ready, you know, for the youth to work with people, to just be another worker, perhaps they can do something else. So we realized that many of our youth in ASEAN, especially, you know, kudos to them. They are really enthusiastic and very passionate about changing the community, the better life for people in this world. So because of that, so we come out with a social enterprise program. And thank you for the support from German government, GIZ. So we managed to roll the program successfully. So for me, I will like to share a little bit of what is social enterprise program and what is the content of this program. So we did a series of capacity building for 20 over social enterprises that we selected, handpicked from few hundreds of 300 to 400 of applications that we receive all the proposals. Then these 20s are the best quality. We think that it's very important for this 20 to be nurtured. Of course, those that not been selected doesn't mean they are not good, you know. This shows that there are so many young people about the range of age to below 35 has the passion to come forward to do change to the society. So this program actually has comprehensive capacity building, and then we have access to 3 months of coaching, mentorship. And then we also have access to finance through seed grants prepared by our partners also, and SAP is also our private partners. And we have also access to marketplace by facilitating all enterprises to connect with potential clients. And also a model of meaningful partnerships also being created during this program. Of course, we do work very closely with HME and also ASEAN Secretariat, thanks to Penchan and her team, has been very supportive and has been giving us a lot of resources to share with the young people that the 20 selected social enterprises. So a quick one also to mention that this youth-centered program was also designed based on the impact and also feedback from our participants. And we did some research and interactions with all these young social enterprises, and we designed the program based on their needs. So these are the third slide will show you overall what kind of social enterprises are there, you know, the 20 of them. You can see that they supported the SDGs, 6 SDGs mainly, SDG 1, 3, 4, 5, 12, and 13. So this is the first programs that run in the region that focus on social enterprise. So of course, this is the just the beginning. We hope that this program will run later. We are in a discussion mode, sections to see how we can bring the second phase and third phase, perhaps, you know, for the longer, more sustainable programs for our youth. And apart from that, we have some examples that we show. One of the example is surplus from Indonesia. You'll be surprised that just now what Noya has shared about Malaysia, Singapore, is very aggressive in Thailand also on the social enterprises, but you'll be surprised that Indonesia is also coming out very fast right now. The Indonesian youth are very aggressive. In fact, not only in our SEDP, which is social enterprise programs that we work with the social enterprises, we also have other programs in the empowering youth across ASEAN, which is partner with Maybank Foundation, has given a lot of funds and grants for civil society and also for social enterprise to do projects with their community. So I think just before I end my presentation, I would like to highlight a little bit of promotions for Araiba. So I know that you have just now another organizations that by OECD that you can join, but there is another ASEAN-based Araiba that you can support and join together. Like-minded social enterprise entrepreneurs can join Araiba. You have the website here, the link. And then this is on the standard of responsible and inclusive business that you have the missions. If you are, they have 7 subject areas for this social responsible and inclusive approach: governance, environment, labor, anti-corruption, human rights, consumer protection, community engagement and development. I'm sure that Thomas is here in this forum. He told me that, to help him to promote. So Thomas, later, I hope if you receive any, inquiry, please answer it directly. Yeah? So I will just end my presentation here and get back to Max so that later we have more productive discussion. Max, the floor is back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Young. It's great presentation, and it's great that it's a fantastic initiative of scaling some 20 social enterprises. It's small, but it still can bring impact. And thank you very much for sharing about Araiba. It's a good example that this kinds of initiative are sparkling up in ASEAN, and there is a trend for growing it. Just a very short follow-up question to your presentation. You speak about young organizations, which are fairly small in scaling. I mean, they're still small. What can be done in order to help them scale to create a real impact? Can digitalization play a role in that, building on your background?
Yeah, thank you, Max. Actually, without digital, they can't do anything right now. If they want to scale up, because, but the benefits of the young people right now is they are born in this era, of digital era. They're born with a keyboard, I think, they just can't be separated from keyboards and this digital world. So take the opportunity, the advantages they have to really tap into this digital world. I think during this pandemic time, it is an opportunity. I look at the silver lining during this COVID pandemic time, because without this pandemic, I'm not saying that I love pandemic, okay, of course not, but this pandemic time, we have to live with it. So we have to look at the positive side, for us to move forward. If we keep on going back and look behind and then ponder when we are going to go back to the, old time, it's not going to happen right now. Nobody knows how long this pandemic going to be continuously going to be there. We might have to live with them. So the best things that can happen to human civilizations right now is digital world. I can't imagine without the digital world. I mean, Max, you and I, and Noya, and all our panels here today will not have the opportunity to share our ideas and to debate, And then social enterprise now is very important because government has proven around the world and business community have proven that they cannot do the work. Okay, I came from government organization. I'm representing government right now. I hope that we can look at this very objectively. Since we have not been able to bridge the gap for the past, God knows how many years already. SDG was created for a long time. And I think we are going to be left behind further behind than to achieve the SDG. So as a result of COVID-19, of course. So this is the time for us to look at our resources, the people itself, to do the job for us. So the best way is to give them the infrastructure, digital, and to support them to grow. So this is my advice. Thank you, Max.
Thanks a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense what you just mentioned. I just want to highlight to everyone that following the first round of questions, we will be you will be able to ask panelists the questions. So please post them in the chat, and we will pick them up in just a few minutes. With this, I'm turning to Marcus Dietrich. Marcus, we have been collaborating with you for many years. You are a Director for Policy at the Inclusive Business and Action Network, IBAN, since 2017, but you have also lived in the region. You lived in the Philippines and worked with the number of in a number of organizations, including ADB, the World Bank, GIZ, and we have collaborated on the ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit and other initiatives. You're also a social entrepreneur in ASEAN, so you really know what is happening in this region and very sensitive to it. I was wondering if you can explain maybe a little bit why inclusive business is so important in ASEAN. Antonella in the keynote mentioned already the particularity of the region, but it would be great if you maybe can explain why this concept is so important. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure being here, and it's always great to work with the OECD. I think it's been a very successful collaboration. It was actually like due to your initiative that we were able to approach AXME when we first, or with the Philippine government, then put inclusive business on the ASEAN agenda. If you could just share the slides now, that would be really helpful. Because I wanted a bit like first introduce Inclusive Business Action Network. It's a initiative, if you allow, funded by the German government. We used to have funding also from the EU. It's been since 2014, working on scaling. And we just heard that word, scaling. It's so important, on scaling and replication of inclusive business models. We work with companies, but also with policymakers. And this is like a niche that we found because there were not a lot of organizations doing this work specifically on inclusive business. And we managed the largest global online knowledge platform, inclusivebusiness.net. Next slide. And just to remind us like what inclusive business is, I've posted here the definition of the G20, which also ASEAN is referencing. And we recently worked together, many stakeholders, to come up with 4 features. What characterizes inclusive business? And we agreed on this intentional engagement with the poor and low income people, the pursuit of financial viability, the intention to scale the business or having achieved scale already. And I think this is sort of interesting. It's the measuring and managing of impact, where a lot of work still needs to be done. So with this in mind, I'd like to not so much talk a lot about us, but more about speaking with the voices of the people here in ASEAN. Pension has already mentioned, it all started in 2017. And this is what the leaders of ASEAN said there in their chairman's statement, recognizing the role as a market-driven and innovative solutions to bring economic empowerment and social impact to over 300 million people at the BOP. This was the start of inclusive business policy development in ASEAN. There was a realization that inclusive business operationalizes the mission and the vision of ASEAN for a resilient, inclusive, and people-oriented and people-centered community. This was then put into the ASEAN Inclusive Business Framework. And here the connection was made between inclusive business and MSMEs, which is so important. It showed how inclusive business can contribute to the MSME agenda. First, we found that most of the inclusive businesses are medium to also large companies. Then we have these special entities, the social enterprises, special area of probably mostly like smaller enterprises, like my own social enterprise in Thailand, Hilltribe Organics. And we can see, and I think this is sort of the biggest connector between MSMEs and inclusive business is the integration in the value chain, because inclusive business models bring so much for MSMEs in terms of access to market finance and technical capacity building. Next slide. And then what happened was through the work with AXME, the capacity building that we undertook, the spark suddenly came onto the national level, and they realized policymakers that IB could help them to operationalize, to bring to action the desire for inclusive growth, pro-poor growth, these big agendas. And with IB, you could actually put it into practice. And then landscape studies started in Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia. Myanmar had done already one, Philippines had already one previously with the ADB. And out of this, in Cambodia, they developed a strategic development, was included in IB in the strategic development plan. Here also highlighted solving the problems of the poor and low-income people and creating new dynamic for a systemic solution. So it's not the opportunistic small here, small there, but it's systemic solution, a transformation of the economy. A very strong statement here also from Malaysia, which the minister Tan Sri Haji Noor Omar is stated recently, that IB is a key to build back the economy better and stronger. So again here, using inclusive business as a way out of the COVID pandemic and to bring about a definition of what actually does better mean. The next slide. Vietnam here has some like two other very interesting points. Deputy Minister of Planning Investor Tran Doi Tung mentioned here the triple wins. So it's good for business, it's good for the poor and for society as well. And that's very important. It enhances women economic empowerment. And in the midterm review of AXME, inclusive business was identified as one of 8 emerging trends holding this great potential of this combined impact of economic inclusion and reduction of poverty. So this gives you a bit of an overview about sort of why we think inclusive business has really caught on in ASEAN. It serves a need and the realization by the policymakers that with inclusive business, with the promotion, the support for inclusive business, they can operationalize their big development agendas.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for this presentation, giving a really detailed presentation of the inclusive business landscape. It's really impressive, and it fits, as you said, very much with the scaling. With this, I actually wanted to turn maybe to Phil for this moment, because Phil, you represent the private sector of the ASEAN. And we see that we need indeed to involve very much traditional companies in order to make a societal impact into this. Just a very short, prior to going to the question, I just very briefly wanted to present you that you work as executive director of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, the apex private sector body mandated by the ASEAN leaders that pursue strategic goals under the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint 2025. And during your career, you acted in a variety of roles and gained knowledge in issues of corporate planning and many other relevant elements. And you're currently working on delivering the Council's policy reforms recommendations. So your voice is really very important here. So with this, I wanted to ask, have you seen over the last few years an increase in development of new partnerships on the private sector side? Do companies call you and ask you to help to create a link? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Max, OECD for this opportunity to engage in a very important topic as inclusive business and social economy. As to your question, have companies been knocking at our doors and saying, "Oh, teach us about social economy and inclusive business"? Well, sadly, no. our participation in this agenda has been so far been very limited insofar as policy recommendations. But as you know, as Penchan and Marcos mentioned, inclusive business, social enterprise is are in all of the important documents of ASEAN already. So all the proclamations and declarations are, you will find there the principles of social enterprise and inclusive business. And that's one. And so far as ASEAN Back, we've been in that stream for the past 3 and 4 years in partnership with ASEAN CSR Foundation. And I'm very happy to hear from Madam Yang of ASEAN Foundation that they're working very closely also and helping promote the ARIBA platform of ASEAN CSR Foundation. Now, these ARIBA are not NGOs. They are companies who are, in their key objectives, have adopted the inclusive business objectives. So our intention is, of course, the question is how can we business, especially the ASEAN Back, help scale up, as you all mentioned, regarding this evolving, very important agenda. And for ASEAN Back, well, we have been trying for the past 3 years to play a role in recognizing those who have ventured in IB through the giving of recognition in our annual ASEAN Business Awards. In fact, I had mentioned to Max maybe at some point, it would be good to have a webinar for them because they are the ones who are championing this initiative on the ground, to hear from them what are the real challenges, where are the opportunities to entice others. So, Madam Yang made my life easy this afternoon because what I heard from her of what ASEAN Foundation is doing in so far as the SEDP program is fantastic. If I can just summarize the approach they're using, it's what we also use for our MSME empowerment, which is the 3 M's. That is, to ensure success, you need first, you need the money, both on the funding and the profit side. You need the markets, and you need the mentoring. So all these 3 elements I saw very clearly in the presentation of Madam Yang, and I hope we ASEAN Back can work closely with them, because if you want scale, I think that's an area where we could be of help. 7 of the 10 member representatives countries in ASEAN Back directly represent the National Chamber of Commerce and Industries. So it's a very relevant and I think powerful source of support in promoting IB. And at the same time, all the major businesses, organization associations are also represented. So maybe it's about time we help simply co-promote what ASEAN Foundation is doing together, of course, with ARIBA of ASEAN CSR network. Because end of the day, we keep talking, and I'm very happy on the policy side that Marcos, Penchan have been very successful in taking positive strides, in embedding this in the policy agenda at national levels of ASEAN. But on the business side, we want now to make it as attractive as possible for business, especially the big boys. That's another area where we are hoping that ASEAN Back can help put together those who play very relevant roles in the economy. These are the conglomerates, both on the financing, manufacturing, and the key sectors. So if we bring them there, they will assure you of who would like to imbibe on the mentoring program, and taking them in as either a stakeholder, a supplier, or or source for workforce, and can definitely make a difference. Only then I think, yeah, once we are able to bring this at that level, can we find all the others to start knocking on our doors and say, okay, we want to be like that. You know, you don't need further convincing on the importance of inclusive business and social economy. I think it's there, the elements are there, but maybe it's about time we work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. I remember very much the 3 M's that you mentioned. It's money, markets, and mentoring or skills. This is something that has been coming up indeed. And what you're mentioning also in terms of involving the big players, the captains of the industry is really crucial. We look at you at ABAC with the maybe ability to share these concepts among them and bring them closer to the variety of small, medium enterprises and medium-sized inclusive businesses, because that's something that could make a difference. If we want to make an impact, that's probably where we really need to go. Let us. I'm turning to Julia Ajmon-Marsan, who is the Director of Strategy and Partnerships of the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area. And Julia has been working for area for several years, but prior to that, we used to be colleagues at the OECD, and I'm very pleased to see you here. And at the OECD, you worked on issues related to innovation and a number of other elements. Julia, I know that you recently moved to, since you moved to Asia, living there, you definitely have seen the region change, and you have been working at area on issues also related to inclusiveness. And I was wanting to check with you, what do you think about this, and what have been the changes in the region that you have been observing over the last few years?
Thank you very much, Max. It's great to be here at this side event of the OECD Steer Up Ministerial. In case not anyone is fully familiar with who we are at AREA, we're an international organization that was established by the 16 founding members of the East Asia Summit with the mandate to support with our analysis and strategic thinking the process of integration and development at socioeconomic level across ASEAN. We also have collaborated with OECD on a number of projects, including the one I think Max mentioned previously, the SME Policy Index for this topic, social enterprises. And more recently, as AREA, we have published a report on social enterprises and disability. And I think I will say a couple of words of this report later. But to reply to Max's question, I think we are observing interesting trends across the region. First of all, and others panelists have mentioned this before me, the issue of social enterprises, inclusiveness, sustainability, it was already there, very much present in the political discourse, even before the pandemic. But then the pandemic came and acted as a catalyzer. I think now, also because of the pandemic, there's a sense of urgency. There's a recognition of the fact that we cannot waste time, and that a transition towards a more sustainable and inclusive ASEAN is absolutely necessary to build back better, or anyway to, let's say, have a better development in the post-pandemic phase. So these issues are becoming even more crucial. And this is why even in the strategic documents released by the ASEAN Secretariat or ASEAN member states in the pandemic phase, when we want to start discussing how the post-pandemic reality will look like, issues like sustainability, inclusiveness are absolutely keywords, and obviously social enterprises have a very important role to play. And this is also witnessed by the fact that in all recent speeches, for instance, by the ASEAN Secretary General, there are always pointers to these issues. So something that, again, was present already in the political discourse before the pandemic, but now is absolutely something that is always there, and there's a clear recognition that something needs to be done now. The other trend I want to talk about is something that, in a sense, Antonella has already quickly covered, but let me spend another couple of minutes on it, because I think it's really, really important for the region. ASEAN is a relatively young region. Some countries across ASEAN are starting to getting concerned and worried about aging population, but still it's certainly younger than, for instance, most OECD countries, especially in Europe and North America. And also what is interesting is that there is a growing cohort of millennial and Gen Z consumers who really value sustainability and inclusion. Just to give you a couple of numbers from the World Economic Forum, if you take the continent overall, Asia, a quarter of the global population of millennials are in Asia. And if we look at ASEAN, projections are telling us that millennials and Gen Z consumers are projected to make up 70% of the consuming population by 2030. So a very, very interesting number. And because we know that these consumers are putting sustainability and inclusiveness at the center, and indeed a lot of surveys from leading consultancies, I'm not going to name them, but many, many of them that are providing advice to corporates are telling us that ASEAN millennials and Gen Z consumers are ready to spend more for more sustainable products and services. So there's also a market opportunity there. And this is why I think that over the next few years, we're going to see this kind of demand pull or push, depending on how you see things, towards more sustainable and inclusive products, services, and so on and so forth. And this is something that young entrepreneurs, wannabe startups in the region are fully aware of. They also very much believe, in this transformation, but they are aware of this trend, and they are already, let's say, developing lots of innovations to meet this demand. So I think this is a very, very important trend to keep in mind when discussing the region and talking about the social economy more in general. Thank you, Max. Back to you.
Thanks a lot. I think what you mentioned is it's really great because it helps us to see it in a perspective, that this is something that is going to grow, and this is something why we probably have to pay a lot more attention, and why policymakers have to pay more attention to this, because this will have a big impact on our future. In your intervention, you just mentioned the new study that you have released about social entrepreneurship and disability. As it was mentioned by Antonello already, the social economy can greatly contribute to the employment of a number of disadvantaged groups, but also in generally in employment. What were the conclusions from this study?
Thank you, Max. I will try to be very brief in the interest of time. We chose to work on this issue, social enterprises and disability, because it's an important issue for ASEAN. According to UN estimates, people with disability comprise around 15% of the global population, which makes them one of the largest minority groups in the world. And if we take the Asia-Pacific region, a bit less than 700 million people live with a disability, which means that a better integration of this group of people into the economy could boost the GDP of the region between 1% and 7%. I know that it's a broad bracket, but anyway, this gives you a sense of the fact that there's also a tangible, let's say, economic impact. So this is why we wanted to focus on this issue. And we did this study to try to understand various trends related to social enterprises working to support persons living with a disability in ASEAN. What we discovered is that social enterprises are a key actor in this ecosystem. There are several social enterprises across the region wanting to support persons living with a disability. And many of these social enterprises were founded themselves by people with disability. And what's also interesting is that what we observed is that they have a key focus on the issue of skills development, education, and training. So they are really working to support the integration of persons with disability in ASEAN labor markets, also by providing sometimes, let's say, either consultancy services or in general, partnering with larger corporations to make them understand how to include these persons in their ongoing business models. Thank you, Max. Back to you.
Thanks a lot. That's very interesting. And I think more research is needed on this. We really need more data. One of the things that we have discovered is that there is very little data available on these things on ASEAN, and not enough maybe data collected. But even in in the European Union, we're get the detailed information on this. Maybe after this, we're going to move in the debate format where all the speakers will be able to answer the questions all together. But maybe just prior to that, I would like to share the screen and to present you the answers which we have received from the public on the first, sorry. This is where we're all coming from, and you see it's very, very diverse. We even have participants coming from far away. I've seen somewhere Brazil, but also people, of course, coming from Indonesia and France. And in terms of the representation of the sectors, we have a number of people coming from the private sector and the same equal amount coming from the public sector. With this, I will stop sharing because this might be quite helpful. I'm inviting all the participants to pose their questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will pick them up. And currently, I would like to ask the question to all of the people in the panel, because we have mentioned a number of elements around creating an ecosystem to enable social and inclusive actions in ASEAN. And I wanted to ask maybe a generic question to you. What are the low-hanging fruits that we can really advise policymakers to do in order to help them to provide this? Because we understand there are issues related to funding, there are issues related to recognition. What do you think is very feasible to do in the next, let's say, 12 months in order to make a big difference? Anyone wants to answer this question? Dr. Yang?
Yeah, okay, Max. I think nobody's speaking now. Let me try and do something about it. For me, is the low-hanging fruits is to endorse and to recognize the importance of SEs. So I think this is first steps, because the government, I mean, through ASEAN, of course, I know HME has already endorsed some of our programs. And also, I wanted to echo to whatever has been mentioned by the previous panels. Working with the private sector is another low-hanging fruit, especially the big corporate. Under our programs, we do work with SAP, and they sent 20 corporate mentors to mentor our SEs. So these are some of the collaborations we have been doing. And then, of course, what mentioned by Gil, we would like to really support this. And if possible, we can share how our working models with the private and public partnerships model, so that other organizations maybe can do the same, So because one organization cannot do everything. So I believe that the ripple effects can be done together with collective actions by everyone. So the low-hanging fruit is definitely the another part is for government to put some of their funds. There are money around to put some of the funds to allocate to the micro organizations that can benefit from this, because for me, it's the most difficult sections of this SE is the micro, because they couldn't get any funds, they couldn't get any loan or any investor investing on them, because investor wanted to see immediate outcome from money, measurements from money, not social impacts. So I think these are some of the low-hanging fruits that we can tap into. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marcus, I think you were the second one to raise the hand.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of share some two exciting developments from Cambodia, which has put inclusive business as a national strategy, is now implementing the IBC, Inclusive Business Enabling Environment in Cambodia. And the one is we're currently supporting the development of an inclusive business coaching and mentoring guide. So this is aimed at intermediaries, at consultancies, to help them consult their clients on how to develop inclusive business models. We will pilot that, roll it out, and then we look forward to expand it into ASEAN. And I think this could be a very interesting and powerful tool to help consultancy firms to respond to this growing demand of companies now in developing inclusive business. The second one is accreditation. Cambodia has now accredited 18 companies as inclusive business. There will be another round of accreditation. And this gives instant recognition. And it helps already the entrepreneurs, because now they can say, yeah, we are like a recognized, we are a good company. And then people respond to it. Policymakers, if you go to the cities, they go to the rural areas, they can say, we've got this seal of approval. And this sort of facilitates their work. So this is like a methodology that has been sort of developed for the last 10 years and is now being applied in a bigger scale. And we look forward very much to see the impact of these activities.
Thanks a lot, Marcus. I also want to highlight the fact about accreditation because it is very relevant, and Malaysia has recently started also rolling out accreditation system for the social enterprises, which have been, I'm quite impressed with this, and over 500 enterprises have been already accredited through this, just in Malaysia. So that's a nice way also, which can help us to have correct numbers or have a more detailed data or information around the size and scale of the sector. Hill,
Yeah, maybe just 2 or 3 points. Hopefully by the end of the year, we will have an IB portal. As you know, ASEAN Secretariat has just launched the ASEAN Access Match. I think it's a good platform to partner with. Anyone who wants, how do we get to learn about IB? We are already into IB, but we need markets. Where do we source funding for, for a startup on IB? These questions, they need to find the easiest path for these issues and questions to be addressed. So if we can work together, and I think ASEAN Foundation can be a lead partner here, making it the information sharing, I think is very important, and precisely the capacity building that is already there. I can imagine there are already so many capacity building. There's so many associations doing for the good, CSR, but they just have to reorient towards innovation and towards really addressing social issues and so on. Now, the second is, okay, you need a much better and more, I think, more reliable platform for private sector and public. Public, you have their AXME, wonderful. But you need AXME now to help us. Where are the social challenges that can precisely be opportunities for economic activity, to make business, to churn business out of these issues and addressing them at the same time? And where there can be continuous sharing of experiences on how to scale up. And where I had mentioned earlier that, the leaders of business can also actively take part. So I guess on the short, well, on accreditation, a third point, if you want a private sector representative, Ariba is already developing an accreditation platform. So it can be a very effective partner in private sector partner in that regard. So just the three: a portal, the public-private sector platform with a strong secretariat, and then, of course, your accreditation initiative. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hill. Indeed, I think there is a real need also to develop tools which need to support policymakers, but also a lot of collaboration and can help improve the skills. Skills is a big issue now, and which needs to be improved, and we need to really improve the possibility for a lot of social economy actors at large to be available for a number of this impact investment that is coming into the region as well. And for that, we also need to develop skills. On the other side, we need to improve the skills of policymakers in order to ensure that they understand all the technical aspects of work around this. I'm also very happy, Hill, that you touched upon the second point about the public-private partnerships, because this is precisely, we have This is a word that is integrated into the title of the event today, but I also have seen that there are two questions that have been asked in the Q&A section. So let me go to them. The first one is how to achieve meaningful, effective, and inclusive public-private partnerships at the same time trying to integrate the 17 SDGs. Anyone wants to answer this questions on it? And maybe it also goes in line with the second question that we have. Let me just check it. How important is collaboration among social entrepreneurs in growing the sector? So maybe if any of the panelists would like to touch upon this about the importance of creating public-private partnerships, how they can be created, who should be members of these partnerships, and how potentially they can address the sustainable development goals.
But I'll just give a very quick. So, as I mentioned, the CSR platform has been there for ages. Even big corporations, precisely conglomerates, have their respective foundations doing, bringing back to the community, to the environment, and in fact, part of their governance structure now and regulated are the SDGs requirements. So now it's a matter of just identifying them, okay, and bringing them into a platform where they can share, where they can, coordinate, where they can synergize and complement initiative, and in a way ASEANize or make it a regional initiative rather than focus on national. So I'm sure it's something that will move them, especially for those who, they want recognition and so on. Okay, I just don't want national recognition. I want to be recognized regionally and globally. They are there. So we need to identify them and bring them to something, to an attractive, and if OECD invites them, I'm pretty sure they will say yes. And as an ASEAN Foundation, they get these types of invitation, they will never say no. This is really big deal for them. So you are the drivers there. So that's the easiest way to bring them into a platform. Now, seriously, you need, in any platform, you need a secretariat that will provide a technical, administrative, follow through. Without them, then you're just like a forum. But if you want them to go into initiatives and projects on the ground at regional and helping those at national level, I think that's a second requirement. How do you have that very effective secretary? Because ACME is already there. They are the ones, but ACME is MSMEs. Okay, you want to bring the big boys, you have to go sectoral. You have to find sector champions, not just anybody who's helping anybody. You need to find sector champions. So I guess just those three. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gil. Marcus, based on your experience, was that the way that you approached the sector champions for bringing them into the inclusive business and being interested in that, or did they come to you, or was there working with the companies?
No, it was when we start in a country, we do our IB landscaping, and this is where we find the people, because normally they don't self-declare as inclusive businesses, and then these champions emerge, and this is sort of the fascinating thing. They're always the pioneers. They're out there, and they can then, the role of the policymaker is then to bring it beyond the pioneer, to mainstream those ideas, and this has to be done in this public-private partnership. We had the great champions, for example, in Cambodia, on the policy side, but also on the private side. They're the young entrepreneurs. The Women Entrepreneurship Association have proven to be absolutely crucial in bringing it on. And we have institutionalized it, like the IB accreditation is done as a public-private effort. We can now see it also on the finance side. We are currently developing with a development finance institution and donors a risk reduction facility. This is like a major financial contribution to reduce the risk for impact investors to go into investing in Cambodian inclusive businesses. And this is where the public sector and the private sectors can share and bring in their leverage and their particular competitive advantage to then drive investment into impact.
Okay, thank you very much. I've seen some questions. Just to let you know, all the presentations and recordings will be available after that. It's some people missing it, so you will be able to pick up some of the answers. And we just have a very last question I'm asking to the entire panel. Technology adoption is relatively low in social economy organizations. What role do you see for technologies playing in scaling SC organizations? How can the government facilitate this process? Any volunteers? Julia?
Go first. Okay. Also, because this is related to something that I wanted to address in the previous round. We talked about collaboration. I think collaboration is essential. And what we observed, and again, I think it was really greatly catalyzed by the pandemic, is not only the role of public-private partnerships, but also the one of private-private partnerships, especially between large tech corporations from the region. I mean, the digital unicorns, the various Grab, GoTo, Gojek or Tokopedia, however we want to call them right now, and smaller companies, often with an emphasis on sustainability, inclusion, and the social economy. So these large corporations, they decided that they had to play a role given what was happening. And they developed a lot of coaching, support services for businesses that were struggling, putting again sustainability at the center of the logic of the different programs. So these are very interesting initiatives that again were geared towards supporting this type of businesses to acquire digital skills, to go to the digital marketplace and stay afloat during the pandemic and the relative restrictions. It is something relatively new, and I think it still deserves better analysis to understand what worked a little bit less, also to inform policymakers. And in some cases, there are also interesting partnerships that are a bit, triangular emerging, public, large tech corporations, and smaller enterprises. One, for instance, is the Go Digital ASEAN initiative that is very much endorsed by the AXME, the ASEAN Secretariat. Thank you, Max.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Judith. I think we're actually over time, but maybe just very last comment on the question. Dr. Young, you wanted to mention something, I believe.
Yeah, I think to echo to what has been mentioned by Gil and all the other speakers is this technology support has already happened. Even with our partners, SAP, they offer their even apart from their corporate mentors, they also offer the technology to the social enterprise and the know-how, and some of the another projects that we actually supported is Angels of Impact, who actually organizations that do the Bridge the Gap for Women Entrepreneurships. And this has also been supported by our partners SAP, and they actually bought the products and order from these social enterprises. So for me, there are many ways that we can partner with the corporate, public and private partnerships. Like what Gil mentions, there must be accountable organizations that can lead the way and is trustable by the private sector, because private sector, very simple. Usually when we work with them, they want to see what is the KPI, what is the outcomes, what is the impact. They are not looking at money, of course. They are not asking money from ASEAN Foundation, definitely. Yeah. So they want to see what ASEAN Foundation's projects will create. So our ripple effect, we got 1,000 over from the 20 SEs, impact. And then we funded another seeds fund for the 3 tops from the 20. They have 3 winners, then funded for the projects, then they measure the impact after 1 year. So this kind of things has to be put in place, the monitoring and evaluation, M&E. This part is very important. I think to convince the corporate to come in, these had to be put in place and very transparent. So this is just my sharing. Thank you, Max. I pass it back. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the participants and all the speakers especially, and give a round of applause, virtual applause, to the panelists. It was very interesting. You shared very interesting thoughts, new ideas, new initiatives. and I hope that participants found it informative. With this, we'll move to the very last part of the webinar. We're slightly late. I hope you will be able to remain with us for the next few minutes. And I'm very pleased to pass the floor to Dr. Alexander Bomer, who is the head of the South and Southeast Asia division at the OECD, who has lived in ASEAN as well, and who has opened the Jakarta office, and who will present the conclusions and the way ahead with this. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours, Alex.
Thanks so much, Max and colleagues. Thank you so much for an excellent morning and excellent discussion. I find it really exciting and engaging, starting with what Karen said, that different terms are being used in different countries to define actually what the social economy is, and that there's a movement from a more traditional approach of fixing problems or kind of repairing functions to now really a transition to in a way respond to the, and that was a current theme of many speakers, to the demands especially of the ASEAN millennials, but that's true for the French millennials and for German millennials as well, I would say. So that was really an important point. And then, of course, Penchan's point on how ASEAN has actually, since Philippine chairmanship, picked it up quite a bit with the inclusive business work. Lately, also the social entrepreneurship, inclusive business in the midterm review of the SME action plan, and of course the guidelines for the promotion of inclusive business, which we were very happy to be engaged with. Found it also interesting how Antonella presented the sort of continuum in a way from corporate social responsibility to social economy. Interesting parallel corporate social responsibility when it started like 20 years ago was also a lot about philanthropy and so on, and now it's more about responsible business conduct, more about compliance with standards and so on. So also an interesting similar development, like you see it here on the whole social economy discussion. And then with inclusive business, social entrepreneurship being more sort of in the middle. Why is it relevant for ASEAN? A few speakers talked also about that. Very interesting point that indeed the welfare systems which are being rolled out in ASEAN, group after group, public employees and state-owned enterprise employees and so on, military personnel benefiting from welfare systems more and more. But many have to rely on private schemes, big private insurance, or in this area, there's a lot of room also for revenue generating models which can actually support the rollout of the welfare systems to broader parts of the society. So that's also an important point about the scaling issue was discussed, and maybe I combine that immediately with the financing issue, which of course had a big room. So scaling and access to finance really being a key a challenge, obviously, for social entrepreneurs. Interesting, very concrete proposals here also from Marcus from GSZ, network of supporting consultants and mentoring in a way that's related to Jill's mentoring idea, that also the big guys could play the role of mentoring. But interesting also accreditation, indeed, branding certain enterprises with a government stamp and the public purpose or common interest stamp can help also to attract investors. And then the risk reduction facilities. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I come from that industry. We give a lot of money to the big guys, export credits, investment guarantees to actually mitigate their risks in markets. So why not being also more generous with social entrepreneurs to match private financing or leverage private financing through governmental risk facilitation schemes. So that's, I thought, was also a really important point. Of course, Jill had this point that there's a gap actually you know, in the real world between what businesses are really demanding especially the bigger companies and their awareness about possibilities in the social enterprise, inclusive business sector. And on the other hand, what government has been doing already and how we could bring it more to the big guys and to make them part also of that. Ria, you really are very interesting on the demography. I mean, this 70% is huge, you know, ASEAN millennials as consumers. And it's true, it's also my experience in the region. Young people are so engaged and engaging on this issue that they will also in their role of consumers respond to that. And of course, your points on the digital, very important. To conclude for the way ahead, from my humble point of view as not really an expert here, but we can obviously, as Max was saying at the beginning, feed the conclusions of this important webinar, which by the way opens our ministerial conference in the sense that it was the first side event of the ministerial conference next week of the OECD is conducting with ASEAN Secretary General and many ministers attending next week in Seoul. We will share the conclusions, of course, with the ministerial conference. As Karen was pointing to, we have in our OECD Southeast Asia regional program a network on education and skills, and we could also use that as a vehicle. Maybe Jill, we're looking forward to launching also next week an ASEAN OECD business network, where this could be one of the items and areas we could work on. And then Jill mentioned also that a kind of, from an analytical point, maybe also from our interest point of view, the next level would be to look more into sectors and to analyze also the local levels. Marcus gave a few examples of Cambodia, for example, very, very interesting, very relevant. So we should maybe do more of that. With that, thank you so much again. It was a pleasure, and I'm very happy to see you guys again, and looking forward to other similar good meetings, but also actions on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. And we will just share with you the last slide with the relevant link to the ministerial for if someone would be interested, as well as a link to the our section of the organization working on social innovation and social economy. You're very welcome to contact us through this email, and we hope to remain in touch with you. And again, thank you very much to all the speakers and all the participants for this event.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, thank you.